Welcome to this talk, When the Spirits Come Calling. That's the name of my first book, and it's a biography of the first 40 years of my life. So it will be around the awakening of my spiritual skills, but also how different experiences and episodes within my life have affected my spiritual growth, or maybe also inhibited. So I will start up with my childhood, and then I will go on till when I start to acknowledge my skills and when they start to make a lot of problems for me with this contact to the spirit world, and how I managed to learn how to cope with it and to be in contact with the spirit world and start to work as a medium and a healer. And after that, how it has affected my life in a positive way, and it will be also a little about the problems that I have with the skills in my earlier years. So what is actually the important thing from my childhood was that I didn't have any really big spiritual experiences when I was a child. Some of my students normally have very intense spiritual experiences that could be spirit that comes to talk to them, or it could be contact with angels or something like that. But for my first around 18 years, I didn't really notice any spiritual contact from spirits in that way. But what was actually the most profound thing for me was that I was highly sensitive. And highly sensitive in a way that I had problems being together with other people, because I was sensing them so much and so intensively, and I had problems managing all the feelings. So I mostly withdraw myself and was with animals, because the animals helped me to stay in contact with myself. And also animals are so easy to be with, because if they have a good day, they are very happy. If they have a bad day, they withdraw themselves, but they're mostly happy when they see you. And this one-to-one, soul-to-soul, heart-to-heart communication was very, very important for me as a child. And I actually think that this contact with animals have kept my heart open for not only animals, but also for myself and for the contact with the spirit world. And then, of course, later on also with human beings. So when I see which episodes in my early life that has been very important for me, it's that my mother was sick when I was not very old, around 1.5 years old. She was away from some months, and in that time I was being more connected to my father and to animals. And then a little later on, around 2 years old, I was sick myself and went to the hospital for 2 weeks, and didn't have any contact with my parents. At that time, parents wasn't allowed to come and visit in the night time, and there was my parents was away and had a lot of things to do, so they didn't come and visit me at the hospital. But in a healing in my late 20s, or I think more in my 30s, I went to a healer, a colleague of mine, and in that healing I was sensing myself as this little 2 years old child lying on the hospital, and then suddenly I sensed the presence of my grandfather and grandmother, and it was with such a deep feeling of love and being calm. It's like nearly like a peaceful place within something that was very chaotic, and where I was feeling very much alone and scared. And then I asked my grandmother how if they were there, and she said that she was actually there with my grandfather, because my parents didn't have the possibilities to be there. But and they said that after I went home from the hospital, I was changed. It's like I was a little disconnected. And actually I think that I have been a little disconnected from these early days of my life. So my school time has been very much affected, that I wasn't really present within myself. And again, because I was very much tuned in what other people was feeling and how people were interacting, and also there was sometimes a lot of stress and arguing within my childhood home. I was a very tense little one, and again here the animals were a safe spot for me, keeping me somehow in I was just happy with animals, and animals was happy with me. So in that way I came through the school, and when I went home I was always being with the horses or the cats or dogs, and we have chickens and dogs, and we have a lot of different kinds of animals. Because my parents, we lived on not really a farm, just a small farm with a lot of different kind of animals, and my father had a normal job next to the little farm, and my mother was taking care of us, and also she had a job later on. So in that way I would say my childhood was very much affected by the problems with my sensitivity, and my problems connecting with other children. But when I was, one of the important things was that I really wished a horse. So when I was around 8 years old, I started to pray for a horse. So I draw a drawing of a horse on my wall next to my bed, and then I was just sitting in my bed every evening praying to God for a horse. And when I was 10 years old I got the horse, and I was really, really lucky and so happy. And sadly the horse was nearly a killer horse. It was a very, very beautiful horse, a mixture of a Arabian and a New Forest. She was white and so beautiful, but she was not a beginner horse, and she was not very fond of children, so she was actually a little dangerous for me to ride and to be around. So after a year or so my parents sold her and got a donkey instead for my brother. And I was like, that donkey, it wasn't really good. He wasn't that fond of the donkey. She was very, very sweet. But my parents had this feeling that, all the neighbors was thinking that something very terrible was happening because when she was making the donkey noises, people thought something very terrible was going to happen in our family, because donkeys wasn't that normal in Denmark. And then they changed her to a little pony for my brother. And he was riding this horse, and he was so fond of it. So after a while I bought the horse from him, and suddenly my father wanted a horse, so he bought an Icelandic horse when I was 12. And it was an old horse. He was 21 years old at that time. And I definitely thought that this horse was not meant for being my father's horse, because I thought it was my father was too heavy for him and everything. But I also think that maybe it was because I rather wanted the horse for myself, because in a very short time I was the one riding Vidar, and he was really a heart-opening horse for me, because suddenly I was free to move around in another way than I normally would, and I was free to meet up with other people riding horses and other children that had horses with their parents. And in just a few months I started to ride around the area and visiting other people, and they're starting to visiting me. And in that way this horse started to help me to have relations to other people. Of course I still went to school and things like that, but the most of my time was now connected with the horses and of course the animals and the people that I met with the horses. So he was a very gentle horse, and he was also a very speedy horse. But if I was scared or if I was losing my balance, he stopped right away. So he was much attending how I felt, if I was safe, and he was very protective and a very, very lovely horse. So in that way he opened my heart and opened my relation to other people, and I was having a community around me with other young people that also just loved to ride and had also this sensitivity. I have always sensed the presence of nature very much, also when I was a child. So the most happy experiences I have had has been together with the horses and nature, or just staying in nature. In that way I felt very much connected to what I later on knew as the spirit world, connected with nature. That could be all the spirits helping the flowers and trees and living in the nature, living in the forest. I had this deep natural contact with nature and with the spiritual community within the nature, and I think that started very much when I was around 12 years old and started to ride in the forest by myself or with friends. So in that way this horse helped me very much to also master or cope with the fact that I actually was a human being living together with other human beings. What also was very important for me to try to master my highly sensitivity was drawing. I love to draw and create a lot of different things. I was using that to just to be calm and sitting down, drawing animals, flowers, everything. And I think that also helped a lot. So when I talk to children, I try to find out what their skills is, because I know when you use your skills, if it's creativity, if it's something else, if you are a very active child, you need to move, you need to do something physical to keep yourself balanced. So I was taking care of animals, I was drawing, I was trying to get my family to feel good, and in that way I used my caring for others very much. So I have this caring for the animals, caring for humans in my family, and with that I think the most profound skill I actually have is my is this feeling of love, a feeling of connection with love. So it's more like a clear emotion or clear feeling that I have as my strongest spiritual skill, and have been using that for my whole life. So for up to my 18th, I didn't have any special intense spiritual experiences. It was first when I was a student and I traveled to Iceland when I was 18 years old. I have ended my high school and now I was free at last, and I have decided that I wanted one Sabbath year where I was just going to travel around the world before going into to the university. So I started to go to Iceland, of course, because of the Icelandic horses that I had been riding for 6 years at that time. So I went up there to visit some friends, and I went there for 2 weeks, or I think actually 3 weeks. And when I had 1 week left, I had this intense dream that this sheep that I had at home called Zigzag, which was a sheep that I had developed a very strong connection to because of a lot of experiences that we have had together. I dreamt that she was going to die, actually that she was dying. And my grandfather was in this dream. He was there, totally blue in his head, also dying. And he was saying, Marzcia, I'm sorry, but Zigzag is dying. And in that dream, I clearly sensed that it was not his time, but it was Zigzag's time. So the dream actually showed me that I should let go of her, and I should also here make a difference between the love that I felt from my grandfather and that she was actually ready to pass, and he was not ready to pass. Of course, at that time, I didn't know that dreams could be a communication between me and the spirit world, and also that these dreams that predicts future is normal for people with this contact to the spirit world. All of that I didn't know at that time, so I was really, really scared. So I wake up, I found this postcard with a very big male sheep, and then I wrote to Zigzag, just keep on, I will be, or holding on, I will be back in a week. And of course I also wrote something to my parents about it was a lovely trip and so on, but the thing for me was it was actually a postcard for her, keeping up her spirit till I will be back. And the thing was that when my parent was picking me up in the airport, they had just stopped to take the postcard out of the letterbox, and they had just buried her. So she went sick, and they had to bury her the same day as they got the postcard. And for me, when my father was telling me about that she had died, so it was actually, he was seeing me and he had to tell me at the, a few minutes later that Zigzag had died. It must have been a very strange thing for him to say, but I have been talking to my parents after that, and actually they didn't have connected that I had this dream, that I knew that she was going to die before. So in that way, it was much more something that made me wonder and also scared me a lot. How could I know that she was going to die before she was dead? So that started a very, very big change within myself, because I started to think that there maybe were something more than just, the normal world. But I was also very scared because it was something that predicted death. So this, sometimes I call these dreams or other experiences like wake up calls, or and this one was very intense for me, and I reacted upon it, but I couldn't change the outcome. She was dead after all. So 1 year later, actually it was not 1 year later, it was when I came home from Iceland, I started working in a shop, just sitting at the counter, the grocery was going out of the shop, and I was sitting there at the counter and just doing my work for 3 months. And after 3 months, I had money enough to travel the world for 4 months. So I just had the money, and then I told my parents that I'm going to buy this flight ticket around the world. I was going to Thailand and Malaysia and Australia. And my parents, they didn't really, I don't think that they thought that I actually would want to do it, but I had said all the time that when I was finished with school, I want to have this year where I was traveling, and I got the job to get the money. So now I had the money, so I went off. and in that on that travel, one of the other things that was quite intense for me there was that in a bus travel, I had this short daydream where I saw the horse that I was going to come home to, that I was going to start riding when I came home. She was around 4 years old at that time, and the Icelandic horses, you start to ride them later than normal horses. So I just, really looking forward to start to riding her. So she was very dear to me. And we have just been walking around each other for 4 years, preparing her, been training her from the ground and everything, when you're just looking forward to start riding. And in this dream she was dying. She died. I just saw just one picture of her lying on the grass with a lot of yellow flowers around, totally peaceful. And of course, even though it was a very peaceful dream, I was so scared. So after that, I just wrote a letter home for some of my friends that was much better to take care of horses than my parents were. And because I had done the most of the horse, taking care of the horses, my parents didn't. Of course, they could do it, and they had done a lot of things. But I mostly was the one having the responsibility for the horses. But at that time, I wrote to some friends and I said, please have an extra eye on Svertla, which was the name of the horse. And I think I went around 4 or 5 weeks before I phoned home. And actually there it was true again that the horse had died, because some other horses had been going over the fence into the other horses, and Svertla was running around and then suddenly died. So probably a heart attack or something like that, a stroke. And it had been a very, very scary experience for me if I had been riding her and felt it was my fault that she was dying. So probably something was wrong with her from the start. We didn't know that. So I was so sad. And in that, I was even more scared of this connection with the spirit world, even more scared of how it could actually happen that I knew this before she was dying. So again, it was not like a lovely contact with the spirit or a lovely contact with the use of my skills. So after coming back from my journey, I was a young one. I was going to start on the university. And I had this like a parallel life. I had the inner life where I had these lot of thoughts about how could I know these things, and also this feeling of being a young one going out into the world, and now I'm starting to study. My biggest dream at that time, since I've been 12 years old, of course, now you heard that I was very happy for riding in the forest. So my biggest dream was to be a ranger. So when I applied for my studying, I wished that I could apply for a ranger, but in Denmark you should have a place, a forest that wants to have you as a student working there. And in Denmark at that time, you should find your own place, you should find your own forest that would like to employ you. And because I was a little skinny girl, no rangers would actually hire me as a student. So I had some problems there. So I couldn't take my first choice. I took then a choice as archaeology, prehistoric archaeology, because I really loved to investigate what happened in our past. So I had two big interests that I wanted to go with as a student. It was the interest in archaeology and our past, but also a deep interest in nature and environment. So I had biology as a wish, and I had this archaeology, and I got into archaeology. And because of the study was in Copenhagen, I had to move from home. And again, remember that I had this very sensitive system, sensing a lot of things, and I used a lot of my time with the animals and outside in nature to somehow regulate my nervous system. But the study was inside Copenhagen, so I have to move to Copenhagen, which is the capital of Denmark. And there was a lot of noise there, a lot of humans, and it was really intense for me to move into the city. I got just a little, not even a flat, just a little room, and the kitchen, there was only cold water. There was no stew, no nothing. I have to have this primus, like gas when you light up. You have to, it was very simple. It could as well have been on a camping spot, but it was mine and I could afford it, and it was very good. The only thing there was that it was an old hospital, and after it has been a hospital, it has been a home for old ladies, single ladies. And then it was this not new, but now it was a place where a lot of different people with not so many money was living there. So it was not only students, it was a very heterogeneous amount of people, and I was very overloaded with all those different kind of input I got. But the thing that was the most scary for me was that when I was lying on my mattress in my room, I was just seeing a lot of ladies with no legs flying through the walls, and I was like, this is not happening. This is not happening. It's not happening at all. But it was like that every night. And also at the time I had a mirror in my door entrance. This mirror was falling down the wall with a lot of noise and glass everywhere. It was like everything was actually a little too much for me. So I got my parents had an Angora rabbit, the rabbits with long hair, and I call it the killer rabbit with the cutest ear, a little from Monty Python. She was a very, very a rabbit with very strong personality. So when somebody visited me, she was standing there, sitting there, and then rabbits do like very big noises with their back legs. So she was doing that, and then she was also making the sound as a dog that is very angry. So like, so everybody coming into me should go past her, and somehow I was feeling very safe with her around. But of course. She was also a very sweet rabbit that I could, cuddle and so on. But it was like another thing she was doing was I was lying on the mattress reading, because of course I was studying, so I had to read a lot. So I was lying reading, and she was coming towards me, and there was just a little jar of salt on the floor. And then she took this jar of salt and just moved it so she could pass. And that was how she was. She was very strong-minded, strong-willed, and I think that helped me a lot to have her around at that time. So there was this very intense spiritual or spirit activity in this hotel or hospital, or now my place to live. I was around 21 at that time, and I was really afraid because I didn't really want this to be true, but I was very scared. And of course I had the room farthest away from the toilet, so when I stepped out in the hallway I had to turn on the light. But it was those contact, when you just put your hand on it, it went like minutes before the light arrives. So I was just standing there very much afraid, and of course I have sensed all the spirit activity around me and was really afraid of that. So somehow I started to repeat, in Danish we have a hymn called something like the light of the angel, and I started to imagine that this angel was standing behind of me and just lighting up the path for me and making somehow making a safe surrounding and journey for me, even though of course it's not a journey when you're going to the toilet in the nighttime. But again, so I started to have this contact with the spirit world, and I started actually with the contact with angels. And when I trained this contact, it felt more and more safe and more as I could be myself and be home within myself. So actually this place helped me to start to acknowledge that I actually had these skills, that the spirit world were real, and that I could use the contact with angels to help me to feel safe and to help me to relax and be myself and feel secure. So I didn't really think so much about it before I should write my first book, which were many years later. But my first really trained contact or conscious contact and connection where I felt the presence of the spirit world was when I was 21 and started to use this contact with what I now know is my guardian angel. And I use this contact when I help others to start to train their own skills and to make them feel safe with their contact to the spirit world and the guardian angel. Also kids use this contact very well because they know this presence. They just somehow deep within themselves feel this contact as a natural way of being in the world. And I started slowly to get this feeling. So when I was 21, all of this happened. So my journey till now was actually when I started to come away from my parents and my childhood home. My skills opened up, and that could be the dreams, or it could be when I moved away from home and I moved into a very, very not haunted place, but then again really a spiritual, very intense place, or spirit was very present at this place. And also what happened at that time was that I started at archaeology, and we were a lot of young people, and I had moved in with a lot of young people, and it was somehow a very alive and happy time of my life because a lot of things was happening. And then at a time I felt that one of my female or women, or the one I studying with was as a girl, I started to have a strong connection with her. And when she got a boyfriend, I was feeling very disasterful, and I didn't know why. I couldn't really understand why it affected me so much. And then suddenly it came to me that I actually was in love with her, but I haven't even thought about that before I was around this 22, I think. So it came as a big shock for me that I actually have those feelings towards a woman. And somehow everything was starting to turn around for me. It's like everything went upside down, and I was very frustrated about that, and also scared. So actually still in this house, this hospital where I lived, there was another friend, and I went into her and I told her, you know, Mette, I do not understand this, but I think I'm in love with this student of this from my study. And then she said, Marzcia, don't be in panic. I've just got these tarot cards from a friend. I don't know how to use them, but let's read here. Okay, you should just connect with yourself and ask a question and draw a card. So I asked, okay, what is this for me? And I only draw one card, and it was death. And I was so, if I wasn't scared before, I was very scared after that. So the evening was very short, and I was not feeling anywhere of being more secure, but just even more confused and very much upside down and inside out, and everything was really strange for me. And I went into my room, and I'm so grateful for my friend Mette at that time. She was trying to find out what this card actually meant. And in the nighttime, she was just putting a little note under my door. So when I wake up, I could see that, Marzcia, it's not death, it's just change. It's change. Everything is like what's old dies away and new things start. So it's just changed, and I should certainly say it was a change. So not only did I now had a lot of spirits around me, like old ladies flying around with no legs through the walls, and a connection with an angel, and also now unlucky falling in love in another woman that was another place in her life, and everything was so strange for me at that time, and it actually didn't help me feel more safe with my ability to be connected with the spirit world, or guided by the spiritual world, or supported by the spiritual world. So after this experience, I was like, I just had to talk to my best and oldest friend, one of the one that I was starting to ride with when I was around 14 years old. So she also have horses, and we were just connected so much. So the only thing was that she was on her world travel around the world, and she was on, I think at that time she was in Indonesia. And I just had to meet her. So even though I didn't have so many money, I just took a flight ticket down to Java in Indonesia, and I just spent 2 weeks with her down there, just to talk to her about the big things in my life, and it was so nice for me to meet up with her. She was coming from Bali, and she was traveling with another friend, and we only have those 2 weeks together. And when they traveled another way, I traveled to Sumatra. And the reason that I'm saying this is that every time I experience a big heart opening very intense spiritual things happened. So you should remember right now that I was in an intense time of my life where a lot of feelings and emotion was just moving around big time, opening up myself to the life. And what happens on this trip to Sumatra was that I was on a orangutan rehabilitation place where they were teaching young orangutans to survive in nature, or captured orangutans that was released to the nature. They tried to train them to get back into nature. And of course, because of my interest in nature and rainforests, I went up there to see this site. And it was out in the jungle. There was no electricity at all. So after, of course, there were, because they have the generators. So they have the generators, but in the nighttime there was no light, no energy, no generators. It was only in the daytime. And I was living in the top floor of a building. I think it was, of course, it was wood. It was very, it was like a cottage. And I was lying there in my bed, and I had a really, really intense dream. It was very close to my birthday, and I missed my family, I missed my parents, I missed Denmark. And in this dream I had this very intense feeling that I was connected with my parents and the love between us, and I was feeling very good about that. And suddenly, just after that, the dream turned into a nightmare where I was, there was this mixture between Alien and the clown in like E.T. And I had this really, really intense being that was haunting me because he had said that he had given me the possibility to be in contact with my family, and now I owe him my life. So in that dream I was just running, and I was very much scared and suddenly I was waking up. I was waking up because there was a bright light from the window on the top floor of this building where I was in, and there was no light, but what I saw was an intense white light coming in from the window, and there was a dark shape as a spider. And what was most scary for me was that I had this really cold feeling on my backside, and I couldn't move at all. I was like paralyzed. So I had this feeling that there was two beings there, a very light one from the window trying to wake me up, and one that's trying to somehow frighten me and scare me on the backside. And very slowly I got the feeling back to move my body, and I went out of this paralyzed state and I went outside. Of course there was no electricity, so I light a candle and I sat down to come out of all these experiences. I sat down again and wrote a letter to some friends, to a mother of one of my dear friends at home, because I knew that she would understand this spiritual contact, because I was very sure that something intense was happening right there. And again, this experience was very frightening for me to have, because I couldn't understand how this white light could be so intense and powerful at that point and reach me in the room. And I couldn't understand how someone that's not there in the room was so present in the room. And it was really, really scary for me at that time. And later on that trip, I went on you know, just like a trail. We had to walk through the forest, up in the mountains, and we had a break, and we had to wait on our dinner. Our guides had to, you know, cut the fish. They have to find the fishes. They took what they could from nature, prepared food for us. So they have to do everything. So I was the only woman. There was I think around 3 or 4 men. But suddenly I just looked at one of my travel accompanied, one of them I was traveling with, and I was so hungry. And I had this feeling that my face was changing into a Black Panther. I even felt how my teeth were changing into the panther teeth. And I was just, you know, I could just break his neck and start eating him. I was so shocked. I was really in shock. Of course, when I noticed that was how I was feeling, I went back again to myself somehow. And I was very, very scared that I had this feeling of changing my body into an animal. And these 2 experiences within maybe only 2 days was very intense for me. And now after that I went back to Denmark, and again, this is all to explain that much of my time when I was up in my 20s, I had a lot of not so good experiences with the spirit world. The best one was the contact with my guardian angel, but I had a lot of things that was frightening me a lot with having those skills or having this contact. So what happens when I went back to Denmark was that I actually was that lucky that I got the university had to find a place in the forest for ranger students. So because of that, I changed from archaeology till the ranger study, and I started to be in the forest working there for a couple of years, because I then could have my first choice, my ranger study. So next to my awakening with the spirit world, I also have this positive change within my with my normal life, if you can say that. So after that I went back to being very much in the forest and have this contact with the forest. I also fell in love with a woman, and we moved together, and I stayed with her. We were together for 5 years in that time where I was a ranger. And after 2.5 years as studying the ranger, I found out that I rather wanted to be a biologist. So I applied for studying biology in the university, and I got into that as well. So the change was that I had this spiritual experiences, but I really somehow tried to lock them down. I didn't use my contact. I didn't use that part of me at all, and I was afraid of it. I just wanted to continue being what you can say, a normal person with a normal life, taking care of, you know, family and study and like that. But what happened was I was still a little curious about this spiritual thing. So I went to a workshop with a lot of different kinds of training, a little healing and explanation about spiritual world. And I went there actually with my mother in my 20s, around 25 or 26. And we tried to heal a little, and he told me that many of his students sometimes noticed his mother from a past life, and when she came, it could be with the music, or it could be with the smell of cigarettes or smoke. And I was thinking, yeah, that's all right. And at that time I had a job where I was cleaning in a kindergarten. So I was cleaning the kindergarten, and suddenly I was smelling this smoke or cigarette, and there was no one around me, and it was in a kindergarten, so people didn't smoke there, and it was in the night time. So he had told me, if she will visit you when you have this course, just welcome her. So I was like very, very much afraid. I was smelling the smoke. I was sensing her in the door opening, and I was just like, welcome. I said that, and then I was just hurrying, being finished, and running out of the room. And that was actually one of the first contacts where I was seeing a human spirit. And after that, not so long after that, I went to, I had a Reiki 1 healing attunement, where I started to train healing. And when that happened, I really felt like this contact with the life force, or the loving energy in the universe, like a white light just floating throughout my whole body. And I sensed this feeling of suddenly having a lot of, it strengthened my intuitions very much. In that way I could feel when something was right for me. I had this light feeling of being light, and if something was wrong for me, I was, getting smaller, and my body and emotions were getting tight or dark or gray or without life or sadness. So I started to have this way of my system trying to help me to make choices that actually strengthen the light within me and the life force within me, and the light and love within me. So when at that time I was in the middle of my 20th, and that made an enormous change for me, because it was a very positive contact with the spirit world and with the healing. Of course I chose Reiki healing because even though I've had a lot of experiences where it could be spirit, it could have been mediumship, it could have been many things where I had a direct contact with guardians from the spirit world. I was so afraid still. If I should see a dead person, I was sure that I was nearly dying of fear, because I had so many fearful experiences and I didn't understand them, and I didn't have anyone to talk to them about, to explain me what I was actually seeing. So I chose healing because it was, helping others. It was no spirit, and Reiki is also not connected to religion in that way. So it was very suitable for me that it was love, and it was light, and it was life force energy, and it was just being a channel for the divine. And that was a very big step for me, and a very big step for my development as well. So I started to heal people, and I started to sense how the healing made people's soul or their inner light, made them grow with that, make them feel better emotionally, physically, mentally. And I sensed the presence of the spirit world helping the person. So when I was healing, the spirit world wasn't interested in connecting with me. They were just helping me, or I was channeling the help for them to help the person that received the healing. So it was a very safe journey for me into the healing process, and it opened my contact with the spiritual world very much. So in that way, that experience accelerated my contact with the spirit world enormously. The next was a big change for me. There was that I went to another workshop. You know, it sounds like I went to workshops all the time, but you know, many years was around. There was nearly a workshop every year or something like that. And in that, I started to train a more direct contact with my guide team. And one of the visions I got at that was actually a vision where my ex, at that time present girlfriend, and I was going apart. We were like children starting to fight and box with each other. And if we just went away, we just, without any problems, we could turn each other's way. We didn't have to fight. But I was afraid of that picture, and I wanted us to stay together, because I also had another vision about me staying with a woman that was playing the organ as an old woman. So it was just like, it must be that one that I was together with at that time, because she had talked about wanting to play organs. So I started to push her a little more to start to play organs, go to an organ school and learn to play it and so on. So for 1 year I was trying to really ignore a vision where we were going apart from each other, and just focusing on the one where I was with the woman playing the organ. And after a year I proposed to her, and she said no, and I was so surprised. I was really, really surprised at that time. I couldn't understand anything about it at all. And it was also like she was saying, we have to move from each other. So within 3 weeks I had proposed, and suddenly I was alone with a house. I was alone with I think 2 or 3 horses, 2 dogs, a cat, and a car. And I was, you know, I actually didn't have any money, because I was still studying biology, and I have used most of my money. In Denmark we get money from the state, but if you you know, it's only a amount of money that's to one education, and as you have heard right now, it was my 3rd education. So I was a little low in money. I had a very good job where I was working at the Danish environmental studies, and I was really, really happy for that. I was out in the nature. I was you know, working with plants, and it was, I was really happy for that job, so it's no problem. But it wasn't really enough to have a whole thing for myself. But so that was a big sorrow for me. So my heart was broken, and everything was turned upside down again. And in the meantime, also in that time, an old cat that was one of the one that has been taking care of me when I was living at home with my parents, in my parents' house, she was called Blue Rain. She was sick, and was very sick, skinny, and she had cancer. And the vet was coming to you know, to make her sleep, and she didn't want to sleep, so she got a lot of injections. And she was fighting so much. She wanted to decide for herself when she was going to die. And we had decided for her. I was there because, you know, she was my friend as well. And so it was very hard for me to see her in this last minutes of her life. And what happened was that she was not really fond of not choosing her own death. So she started to come to me after she was dead. So when I was also sad because of all that was happening in my life. Actually, I didn't know at that point that my proposal was neglected. I was just planning the proposal. So she was dying. She died, and she started to come to me after she had died, and I was so scared. I could drive my car, and suddenly she was sitting next to me on the passenger seat, and she was just, you know, really angry. This cat didn't have a voice, so she had always expressed her with herself without voice, but with an intense mentally strength. And she was just sitting there with a lot of and I was like, oh! And she could also come to me in the bathroom, just coming there and really being really intense. And I was so scared. I don't know if any of you know the movie with the animal churchyard, but I had this feeling of this cat that was from hell trying to, I don't know, I was so scared again for this contact with the spirit world. But I really knew my cat, and I knew that she was all right, but she was so angry. And she started to get a little less angry. And actually, when I proposed to my ex, it was the last time I saw the cat. And at that time we went to Sweden. That was where I proposed. And my ex was saying no, and I was just sad, and I was looking out of the window and I saw the cat, and suddenly she changed into a little girl and ran away. And that would say, I haven't seen her since. So what happened there was she was changing herself, or she actually let go of the physical realm and entered into her spiritual place. And I guess she will be born again, or maybe she's already born again. And I still don't understand totally why she changed into a human being. But sometimes afterwards I've seen that healing animals that comes and have some kind of assignment to help humans that have problems, that could be kids or grown-ups, that some animals I sense more like a guide that are incarnated into an animal to help and support the human that they actually are connected with. Or I have this feeling that Blue Rain has been there not only for me, of course, but for my family and for the other animals, but that she maybe were more than an animal, or maybe that animals having a lot of animal, pets animals have a lot of contact with humans to adapt the human nature, that they are training themselves into being a human the next life. It could be or it could not be, but I can just say that I saw her on that field change from cat into a little girl running away. And I was, of course, besides all the other things that was happening right there in that moment, it was also something that somehow is printed in my brain and my experiences. So my ex was moving out. I was trying to get hold of myself again and trying to get the economic to function, and I had to rent out my house and live in a little garden cottage in the backyard of my parents' place. And I was feeling sick, and there was a lot of problems there, and with myself and the money, and everything was chaotic. And I had visited some of a colleague of mine, and we have started working with past lives. And I found out that I had some problems with the connection and the beliefs in God in this past life. So I had a dream after this work I have done with her. I had a dream that I was a young nun in Italy, and there was this nice young singer, male singer of course, that I was in love with, or the nun was in love with. And of course she got pregnant and he got away, and the other nuns and the family wasn't very keen about that kid coming, so they took the kid away from the nun, and she was so in despair that she hung herself. And I woke up I wasn't able to talk at all. I had this feeling of being strangulated, and I couldn't talk. And I had that dream in this cottage in my parents' backyard. And I had this very intense feeling that it was very important, that I have lost the trust in the family, trust in love, and trust in God. And next to me, I had a formula that was an application for a clarion school in Denmark. Some of my friends from the writing club, or also my parents' friend, had been to a talk with the woman that was a school master from this school in Denmark. And she had thought Marzcia would definitely be one that should try to apply for this school. She was the one that I had been writing to about the horse that I saw had the dream about being dead. So Sus knew that I had this contact with the spirit world, and she had this feeling of that this school should be something that I should apply to. So I had this dream, I had this really intense insight that my contact with God was broken in this, and my trust in love was broken, and my trust in family. So I had to somehow heal up on all those levels. So actually I started to write. I started to write this application, and at that time I had started to meet up with Jette, which is my spouse or my wife now. So I broke up with one, and just few months later, when my life was still very chaotic, I actually fall in love again with Jette. And what happens when I met her was that my heart opened up very much, and I started to have a lot of spiritual experiences. So when I met Jette, it was like right away I started to have contact with spirit, both animals and humans, and I couldn't really talk to anybody about all this stuff, but I trusted Jette so much that I tried to describe one of the men that I was seeing, and she, as the most natural thing in the world, she said, "Oh, that's my mother's brother," and you describe him totally how he looks like and how he behaves. And I was in a shock, because it was the first time that I trusted someone so much that I tried to describe a person, and it was right. So that experience also was before this past life experience with the nun. So I had a lot of experiences at that time where the spirit world tried to reach me and try to contact me. So when I was in my home, this little home that I had to, rent out, and later on I had to sell it. It was just right next to the forest. It was just a little house, but I loved that house. But when I went inside my house, it was just like going in a city with a lot of people. I was getting touched all the time. It's like when you go and there is too many people and you touch their shoulders all the time and trying to come around, that you have this feeling of being too many people in too little space. I had that feeling in my house all the time. So when I talked to Jette about this deceased person or spirit from her loved ones, and he started to say something to her, it was like a big wall that I had been surrounding myself with that broke down, and I couldn't tell myself that it wasn't real, that the spiritual world wasn't real, that my skills wasn't real, that I was mentally ill or something like that. So I had all those thoughts, and all of that happened before I was in my cottage in my parents' house, in my parents' garden, and I had this dream with the nun and the application. So at that time I was opening up to the spirit world. I had no clue about how to control it, and I felt invaded all the time. So I couldn't talk because my throat was like, I've been strangled, and I was just sitting down, writing the formula, applying for this school, and I got to, you have to talk to Gertrude Ballon, which was the school teacher at that time. So I had to talk to her. So I went to this training, talked to her, and I was just saying, I want to close everything down. I just want to live a normal life. I am at the end of my biology study, and I just want to live a normal life. It's enough that I'm in love with a girl, and I have economically it's disaster and everything. You have one single thing in this education that I'm interested in. That's what you call spiritual science, because science I can understand. At that time in biology it was very much nature science, and I loved it. So she was just looking at me saying, Marzcia, you are allowed to start. And I'm sure that she has been laughing within herself very loud, because as when I see my students before they have start their training, I can sense the potential, and I know that she sensed that my potential was very good. So I was just like, I want to go away, I will not use it, I just want to live a normal life. I take this study only because of the science part, but not all of the other things. I just want to, close it down and live like everybody else. But when I started, very soon after I started, I could sense this really deep love to the spirit world. I sensed this really, really intense love from the spirit world and the divine to the people that I was working with, and I was sitting in the middle of that love, and I was starting to develop the trust in the life, trust in myself, trust in the divine, trust in love, and the development was going very, very fast at that point. So what I can see is that every heart opening in my life has opened up to the spirit world. And of course in the start I didn't have this feeling of being secure with it, and I was afraid of it. But if I had someone earlier in my life that could understand it, help me to master my skills before, or to be in the right contact with the spiritual world instead of being afraid, it would have been so much easier for me. And because of that, I have a very deep interest or calling in helping youngsters that wake up with these spiritual worlds, with this awakening with the spiritual world, or have this contact with the spiritual world, to help them in that process of saying yes to their skills, and to help them to be calm with the skills. So when I started the training, I found out that it was very, very good for me to do. I still continued to have my biology and a deep interest in that, and I continued with my spiritual work. So when I was finished in 2001 as a clairvoyant counselor and healer, I just started working right away. And I really love the work with people. I love to be a channel for the spirit world. And what happened after that was that it went slowly. I got a new place to live. I moved in together with Jette, and everything turned out that I had to go into the city and just live there. So my study was in the city, Jette was in the city, and I sold my house, and in that way my life changed. At that time now, I was in the late part of my biology study. I had to make the master project, And I have just read James Redfield's book, The Celestial Prophecy. And in that book, there is a part where people are sitting with plants, exchanging energy with the plants, and sensing how the plant actually grow with the contact, the loving contact with human, and human grow in the loving contact with plants. And that inspired me to make a healing project with plants, distant healing, where I had healers in one greenhouse and control people with plants in another greenhouse. So I started to work with pea plants, and I had the plants were the exact same plants that we normally work with at terrestrial department of the university where I had my master degree. So I made a normal traditional project study, and I made also a healing study. And because I made this normal traditional study, they also said yes. My professor said yes, that I was allowed to make the healing study as well. And what was interested there was this, the healer were coming to the university talking to the science, and the science was talking to the healers. So after the healers has went to the greenhouse healing the plants one time a week, and I had the control person sitting in the other greenhouse. Then the plant was putting together again, so all the plant was together the most of the week, except for 2 hours where they were in each greenhouse next to each other, and then they were put together again. But the healers I was buying cake, so the researchers and the healers was eating cake, or if it was warm it could be ice cream, and they were exchanging. And I really felt a really intense joy with these two worlds communicating with each other. And actually I feel that my work as a person, or my soul, is like a bridge builder between the spirit world and the normal world, or the traditional world, or this bridge between soul and integrating soul and the spirit world into our normal natural way of being in our life. So my studies started to show me a direction for the rest of my life, because what it has started up within me is this deep calling for trying to merge soul and body, and soul and healthcare system, and the soul and trauma work, and the spiritual world, and the healing work within that is one of my key areas that I really find a lot of joy within working with. But I also feel it's very important for humanity to really integrate soul, body, and this understanding of what we actually are as a human being, a soul that lives throughout our human being and throughout our everyday life. So at that time in biology, in my biology study, I started up on that path. So when I ended my study in biology, I wanted to make research, healing research on cancer patients. So I went to England, where they have a lot of healers on the hospitals and hospices and in the cancer centers. So I went over there to investigate how they have integrated that in the healthcare system over there. And I wanted to apply for money for a PhD study to integrate that into a Danish or Scandinavian model. I never got that money, but it's still one of the things that I really use a lot of time and energy, and I have a lot of hope for. So where I am right now is that we are a lot of Danish healers from our national unity of Danish healers called Healeringen. There is a subgroup there called Human Healers, Human Healing, that work very much in integrating or trying to get healing integrated into Danish healthcare system, and we have this good contact with the English healers and the doctor healer networks in London as well, and Angie Buxton King and her work, and the Sam Buxton Sunflower Trust. So we have this. I still work with this deep interest in integrating healing into the healthcare in Denmark. But what also happened at that time, when I was finished with my biology study and I was started employed in the Copenhagen University with a department that worked with healing, I still had my own clinic next to it. After a while, I didn't get the application, I didn't get the PhD study, so I ended my job at the University of Copenhagen, and I just said to myself, I just go full time with my spiritual work. And for a year or so, it went really good. I had a lot of clients, and I just grow with my spiritual work and loved it, and I started to teach in Reiki, and everything was very nice. And one day I was just normally, after I finished in 2001, I had used morning meditation where I connected with the healing energy every morning, and I was just connecting with the healing energy there this morning, and I was thinking, maybe I could just have this lovely contact all the time, all the day, and just trust in what the world will show me today. And I went on my bicycle through the city of Copenhagen, and just a few meters, maybe 100 meters before I entered my clinic, one of my colleagues from Copenhagen University, the one that had got my job after I left the university, she stopped me and said, Marzcia, there was a very big amount of money that was coming for a healing project to investigate healing and breast cancer, the effect of healing on breast cancer patients. And actually I have got that PhD for nearly 24 hours, but my professor, he withdraw the offer, and that was one of the reasons that I quit also, because there was 2 doctors that would like to take the money and make a project. And of course it's much better to have 2 doctors making a project than a biology candidate. So of course I could understand this thing, but the problem was that they didn't manage to have a good solution, so the money was still there after a year, and they asked me to come to talk to them if I could start up to make a healing project. And I was like, is that actually what you mean? Now I'm so happy with my spiritual work, I have my clinic, I have very good days, and now you will pull me back into science. But I also was very, very aware that I had asked to be open and really take in the opportunities that will come to me that day, because I was, just opening myself for what my directions in my life should be. And the direction was back into science. It didn't end up with that science. I got into another science project with healing as an offer to rehabilitation of colon cancer patients, not in Copenhagen but in Odense, and it was so exciting for me to be back. I was there for 2 years, but then again, not after that, but in the meantime, of course, I was doing both at the same time. I was starting to make a lot of TV. There was I was contacted by TV production that wanted me to make wanted me to be one of the mediums in a series called The Spirit Returns, so you can understand where. so this series was about haunted houses and people that have problems with spirit in the house. And of course I was like, am I ready for that, or is it too early, or is it me? I'm normally, when I work very much with healing, I work very much with people's developments and traumas and so on. But I also had a lot of contact with, of course, deceased person that need healing to enter the light even more. So I was a little nervous saying yes to that TV production. So I said yes, but I trained a little. So I was in a gathering where I was making contact with spirits, loved ones, and I giving message from the loved ones to my audience. And I was just training to be precise, names and everything. I should work very good. I was very much intense because I had to be ready for the TV production. And then suddenly I was sitting there, I was standing giving this message, and people were starting to talk and look behind me. And what happened was that it was a table that was moving by itself, and a lamp that was turning around. And when I saw that, I didn't see it. The other one was telling me about it because I was working. But then I knew I was ready. I had the power enough, and I was ready to have this contact that this TV production would offer me a possibility for. So I was actually also in the Danish television with these programs with haunted houses, while I was having this research on cancer patients. And I was also offered a book contract actually for this book, When the Spirit Comes Calling. So everything was just being very, very intense for me at that time. And one of the things that opened up was for the TV program, for the book, and also for the research, was also a big decision that was very clear to me, that I had a bunch of energy, and I had a wish to be a mom, and Jette and I was talking a lot about that. But then suddenly one evening I was driving in my car, and it was very clear to me that I couldn't both have my spiritual work and a child. And in that way I sensed that my energy was going towards the spiritual work, and that I somehow in that would use my motherly power, or the wish to be a mother, and the nursing gentleness and tenderness that I have, the love that I had, was being turned towards my spiritual work, my clients, my students. And when that happened, it was the big turning point where the book came, the TV production came, the research came. So somehow the spirit world has said, Marzcia, you have a choice. You can channelize your energy into motherhood and child, or the energy can be channelized into spiritual work and supporting it's somehow supporting the divine within humanity. But for me it was very clear that I couldn't do both, and the one that was pulling me most was the spiritual world, and being a channel for the spiritual world. So in that, everything was happening very fast, because I have a very big, intense career with the spiritual world, and I also have the career, a lot of things to do with my science work. So now we are around my mid-40s, and for the 10 years after that, much of what I've been experiencing the developing with my spiritual work and my own experiences for the last 10 years, it will be described in my new book, Your Soul, Your Life. But to sum up, I'm still working very much as a bridge builder between the spirit world and healthcare system. I still really have a very, very soft heart for helping young people to manage and master their spiritual skills and the sensitivity that often is connected with having this deeper, the potential for this spiritual contact. And I have this really deep love for healing trauma, releasing the soul light in people so they can grow and live their life in accordance with their own light. So what I have to say for this is that when something very intense has been happening in my life, it has also affected my contact with the spiritual life. And as soon as I started to implement the spiritual contact and using my skills, the cooperation between my contact with the spiritual life and my everyday life has started to work much more like a stream of light or a river that I could follow. But I had to be more present within myself. I had to be more grounded, and I had to accept and acknowledge the capacity, that the potential that I have, and that work, that accept has been a little bit difficult. But when I started to accept it, things opened up, and that's what I see in my students when they start to own the potentials that they have, started to understand how they work, that it's actually their sensory system sensing the spirit world, sensing other people, starting to help them to take control about that, around the feelings, the sensory systems, and the connection with the spirit world and the divine. Everything starts to change within them, and they start to have a better possibility to understand themselves and to be in their life in a better way, and start to, be more in accordance with their soul and start to, follow their path. This was the talk for today, and see you next month for the next talk, and thank you for attending.